First at 4, a pandemic is set to change our plans.
Let me be clear. Coronavirus is in our communities. We should be prepared for thousands of cases in Oregon.
A shift in strategy at the national, state, and local levels.
Most of us have never experienced anything like this.
And with new rules on travel,
we changed all of our plans, so now we're going back home.
Empty arenas.
This is people's lives at stake. This isn't about basketball.
And packed stores.
You just want to be prepared with things that'll last for a while.
All this as stocks plummet. Complete coverage starts now. And good afternoon, and thanks for joining us for the 4 o'clock news. I'm Wayne Garcia.
And I'm Bonnie Silkman. We are following many developments surrounding COVID-19 from state leaders and local schools, along with big news for professional and college sports. The NCAA has canceled March Madness, and major tourist spots like Disneyland and Broadway are now closing their doors.
And we're seeing a lot of changes in Oregon, too, including 3 new cases, taking us up to 24. Just today, President Trump also said there is the possibility that he could impose travel restrictions within the U.S. He was asked if he would consider bans to areas like Washington and California, where several cases have been confirmed. This is what he said.
Is it a possibility? Yes. If somebody gets a little bit out of control, if an area gets too hot, you see what they're doing in New Rochelle, which is good, frankly. It's the right thing, but it's not enforced. It's not very strong, but people know they're being watched. New Rochelle, that's a hot spot.
The president said his administration has not yet discussed banning domestic travel, just that it's a possibility to limit the spread of COVID-19. Oregon's governor also announced some big changes for our state today. Here she is.
What is clear today is that we must take immediate action to stem the spread of COVID-19 coronavirus in our communities. Our strategy now in Oregon is shifting away from one of containing isolated cases of COVID-19. Now we are focused on preventing the worst impacts of a mass outbreak from coming to pass.
And following that announcement, we saw people starting to prepare by packing the stores, including Costco in Beaverton. Let's get right to our Fox 12's Pete Ferryman for more on that.
Yeah, as you saw there, guys, the governor appeared at a news conference this morning, flanked by public health officials and other government leaders. Here is what she announced, and we'll get right to it. The governor declared a ban on gatherings of more than 250 people until April 8th. It's a move that immediately prompted the cancellation of some major events. And we're going to have more on some of those that you touched on in our team coverage coming up. The governor did make a distinction, though. She says the ban applies to organized events, not places such as stores, shopping centers, or schools. Speaking of schools, she did cancel all school group activities like assemblies and athletic events in the state of Oregon, but stopped short of closing schools altogether. Here's what she had to say.
These measures have been recommended by public health experts. Considerations of school closures will be a last resort.
Meanwhile, Mayor Ted Wheeler announced a state of emergency in Portland. The move will allow him to assume centralized control of all city bureaus. And finally, all agreed on the importance of social distancing. We've heard a lot about that recently. But one public health official in attendance today did point out that if we find ourselves with overflowing emergency rooms in the months to come, some of the decisions that we're making now may have come too late. And speaking of policy, you guys, there is a discrepancy between Oregon's school policy and Washington's policy now. Earlier today, Governor Jay Inslee said closing schools was a critical step in stopping the spread of the virus. And as you heard from Oregon's governor, we are not quite there yet. So there's a difference of opinion, or at least a difference of policy. Of course, the situation is evolving, and we'll see how things play out.
At any moment, there could be a new development.
Exactly.
Never know.
Okay, thanks, Pete. The big question right now, what are schools doing? Governor Brown says closing them will be a last resort. Though Central Catholic in Portland just announced this afternoon it will move to long-term digital learning starting tomorrow.
That's right. Our Fox 12's Kelsey Watts checked into that part of the story for us and joins us live tonight with those details. Kelsey?
Well, Bonnie, I can tell you pretty much across the board here in Oregon, events like assemblies, field trips, in-person parent conferences, they are all being canceled. It is a long list. For instance, in Salem-Keizer schools, we've also learned that school dances and proms are being canceled, along with outdoor school. Athletic events there can continue, but without spectators. Concerts can continue, but also without spectators. So that means you might see them on Facebook Live or other platforms. Out-of-state travel for staff and school events like the spring break trip to Disney World are canceled as well. But before and after school care will continue, as will SATs, and volunteers will still be allowed in the buildings. In Beaverton schools, all non-essential school-based activities and after-school activities are suspended until further notice. That is pretty much the case across school districts in Oregon. We can tell you also in Beaverton, audience admission for all school-based events and athletics is being denied. The district is working on plans for holding events like board meetings in a new way, and has even developed lesson plans about COVID-19 to help students understand the facts and navigate some fears and stigmas. Now, those are just some of the examples that we are seeing, and if you are a local parent here, you can find much more information from your own child's school district, likely on that district's website. We did hear from a number of parents today on both sides of this issue. Some saying it doesn't make sense to cancel these school activities, but keeping the children in school while we're doing it. Other parents say if we close schools, what about impacts to things like child care, a parent's responsibility to get to work, and meals for low-income families? We'll have that part of the story coming up all new tonight here at 5. Live in Southwest Portland, Kelsey Watts, Fox 12 Oregon.
Kelsey, thank you. In Washington, Governor Jay Inslee making a major announcement today about schools. All public and private K-12 schools in King, Pierce, and Snohomish counties will be closed for 6 weeks.
These closures are limited to the 3 counties named, but it's very important for all school districts across the state of Washington to have very active, robust, and meaningful plans for contingencies that may include them in future closures.
And those schools must close by Thursday, March 17th. They'll stay shut down until at least Friday, April 27th. And this also comes as Ohio Governor Mike DeWine has ordered schools closed there for 3 weeks. That starts on Monday. France has also closed all schools, yes, across the whole country.
With 24 positive cases now in Oregon, and 2 of them are men over the age of 80 in Lynn County. They both live at the Oregon Veterans Home in Lebanon. Now everyone who lives and works at the facility is being tested for COVID-19. The Oregon Department of Veteran Affairs says it's taking this very seriously, especially after what happened at the senior care facility in Kirkland, Washington. The Oregon Health Authority says the men are in isolation and everyone at the facility is wearing personal protective equipment.
Our veterans at those homes are the most vulnerable population that we serve. They've served honorably for their country and risked their lives, and now we consider it a privilege to be in charge of protecting their lives and well-being.
No visitors are being allowed inside the building. Workers there are encouraging family members to remotely visit their loved ones using video calls. Meanwhile, college and professional sports games have been canceled, as you probably know, following an almost unbelievable night in the NBA.
The game tonight has been postponed.
That's right. The NBA has suspended all games. The first game canceled was this one, the Jazz and Thunder in Oklahoma. You can see fans were filling up the stands, but they were shocked after players had already stepped onto the court.
That was quickly followed by the same news for fans at New Orleans and Sacramento games. ESPN says 2 players from the Utah Jazz have now tested positive for coronavirus, including player Rudy Gobert. This video is from Monday after the NBA put new rules in place that requires players to stay at least 6 feet away from reporters. As you can see, he jokingly touched all of the microphones following the news conference there. At the time, it was a prank. Jazz teammate Donovan Mitchell confirmed on Instagram today he also has tested positive.
And following the NBA's lead, other pro sports organizations have also suspended play. That includes the MLS, so that means no Timbers matches this weekend, or any match that matter, for 30 days. MLB has called off spring training and delayed the season by at least 2 weeks. NHL is also suspending its season.
The PGA Tour will be without fans starting on Friday at the Players' Championship, and NASCAR is restricting attendance And on the college level, the NCAA has made a big decision.
Our Fox 12's Brian McMillan joins us now with a look at that major announcement.
Yeah, this is big. Today, the Board of Governors of the NCAA decided to cancel both the men's and women's Division I tournament. This is in direct response to the COVID-19 outbreak. Yesterday, the organization said they would play the March Madness games without fans, but after talking with coaches, leaders, and schools, they decided to cancel the March Madness tournament altogether. The NCAA's president also said all remaining winter and spring sports championships would also be canceled. The news comes after several major conferences, including the Pac-12, canceled their basketball tournaments this morning. Pac-12 Commissioner Larry Scott says it was a tough choice that ultimately came down to safety.
Our highest care has to be for our student athletes, and that's how we reluctantly came to this decision, which we know is really hard for the student athletes, especially the seniors. These are moments they've looked forward to and worked hard for their whole life, so no one came to these decisions lightly.
A matchup between the Oregon Ducks and Oregon State Beavers were among the games canceled today. Pac-12 commissioner said they would postpone spring sports until further notice. He said this is an ever-changing situation and things could change in the weeks to come.
Okay, thank you, Brian. We're just days away from St. Patrick's Day, and Portland's Kells Irish Pub has decided to cancel part of its Irish festival. Organizers say they're complying with Oregon's temporary ban on large gatherings. Organizers also officially canceled Sunday's Shamrock Run, so at Kells, they won't have the outside tent there this year. Also, sorry if you have tickets to Disney's Frozen at the Keller. All remaining performances have been canceled, and this weekend thousands of people were expected to visit the Portland Expo for the spring RV show, but that also has been shut down.
And we're going to tear this down. We're going to take everything back to our lots, and respectively, we're all going to keep the show going. It's going to be at our lots in a little bit more controlled environment without any risk to the public.
And closing bell on Wall Street, Pacto Wallop. Take a look at these numbers right there. All three major U.S. stock markets now in bear territory. They are down nearly 10% after the closing bell today. The Dow Jones Industrial Average and S&P 500 saw their worst day since Black Monday in 1987. This marks the end of what had been an 11-year bull market.
There are constant updates coming into the newsroom about COVID-19, and now you can be on top of the newest stories with our Fox 12 streaming news app. You can watch live newscasts for free 24/7 using any device, including your phone. Just search Fox 12 to watch our newscasts on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV. The 4 o'clock news is just getting started with spring break coming up fast. Some are thinking about travel after a major announcement from President Trump. We're going to head to PDX.
And it was a shock to America. Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson have COVID-19. We're taking a look at what those celebrities are saying about this.
Hey, I'm Mark Nelson here in the First Live Local Weather Center. We do have some weather to talk about. Of course, another fantastic spring day. It's been really nice out there so far this March. It's been breezy out at the beach. But we're going to talk about a little bit of snow that I think a lot of you will see, but not many of you will see it sticking on the ground. We'll show you where that's coming up and when, of course, too. That's in my First Live Local forecast.
With the current news, you just want to be prepared with things that'll last for a while. Just like earthquakes stocking up, similar idea for us and our family. It was crowded, but everything's moving pretty well. The staff at Costco's doing a great job at the line, especially moving people through the checkout. I think some items are just sold out.
Yeah, packed but calm trip over to Costco for local customers following the concerns about avoiding people during this COVID-19 outbreak. One customer told us that he decided to stock up on pasta, sauce, and freezable proteins like chicken breasts.
While some people plan for the long haul at home, others are asking themselves, should I keep those spring break plans and travel?
That's right. Our Fox 12's Pete Fairman joins us once again live in the studio for more on this.
Yeah, a lot of concern about that today. The travel from some European countries to here in the U.S. will be suspended for the next 30 days, starting at midnight tomorrow. President Trump announced that ban last night. U.S. citizens will still be allowed to return home, although depending on where they're coming from, they may have to undergo further testing. The travel suspension starts at midnight tomorrow. tomorrow. It applies to people coming here from 26 countries, which include Italy, Germany, France, Austria, Belgium, Greece, Sweden, and Switzerland. It does not include the United Kingdom. We spoke to a couple of women who are traveling domestically. They were heading to New Mexico this morning to see what they thought about the travel restrictions.
I have no problem with it's not going to, spread. If that's what's going to help, then I'm okay for it.
I think it's a little overkill personally, but if that's what they think is going to help, then whatever. So, yeah.
The travel restrictions were already put in place for China and Iran. The State Department had issued an advisory to Americans to, quote, reconsider travel to all countries. It's the department's second strongest advisory behind simply do not travel. And now cruise lines are taking action. Princess and Viking cruise ships are the first lines to temporarily suspend operations. This applies to 18 of the Princess cruise ships for 2 months. The company says it's being done out of an abundance of caution. It applies to voyages set to leave between March 17th to May 10th. Guests can transfer all the money they paid to a future cruise and will get a cruise credit for fare or onboard expenses. There have been coronavirus outbreaks on 2 of the Princess cruise ships, the Diamond Princess and the Grand Princess. Meanwhile, some sad news from the happiest place on earth. The California Disneyland parks will shut down starting Saturday. The closure is expected to last through the end of the month. Disney's theme parks in Shanghai and Hong Kong were closed earlier this year due to the outbreak. A lot to think about there, and I know you guys had mentioned spring break travel. I know I've got some friends who are planning to travel domestically, but even though there are not restrictions in place to fly domestically, or maybe even reasons not to,
right,
things are evolving at such a pace. Some are expressing some concern, like
sure,
if there's a further ban or flights get delayed or canceled, getting stuck somewhere away from home. So that's something that,
right,
people are just going to have to consider on a case-by-case basis.
Like we've seen, like you said, we've seen extraordinary changes just in the last 24 hours. So
sure,
you just don't
know.
A
week from now, who knows, what's going to, could get a lot better, hopefully not worse.
Let's hope it's better.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Pete.
Yep.
Some big news, had a lot of people taking notice last night. About 6 o'clock last night, we got the word. Tom Hanks says that he and his wife, Rita Wilson, have tested positive for coronavirus.
Yeah, the actor shared this tweet yesterday. He and Wilson are working in Australia right now. Hanks was set to start shooting a movie there on Monday. In this post, he describes their symptoms similar to a cold with some body aches. Hanks also says they both have slight fevers. Wilson is experiencing some chills. He says the couple will stay isolated as long as public health and safety requires. And now celebrities are weighing in on this.
Tim Allen posted this. Woody, I should have made you two wear my space suits, and you and Rita rest and get well.
Oh, I love that. And actress Julia Louis-Dreyfus writing, love and get well soon. Come home soon to you and Rita Wilson. Yeah, that was pretty shocking, I think, when we learned about that yesterday. It's just such a high-profile celebrity.
Yeah, everybody knows him, basically.
Yeah, really crazy.
All right, Mark Nelson.
Okay, so switching gears, as we say.
Yes.
We've got a high note here. Beautiful weather again today. Look at the beach. There's lots of people out there giving lots of distance.
Swings over there.
That is the one thing I will say this. I'm not a medical expert, but just getting outside in this kind of weather, away from everybody else, I think that's great. Great. Just get out, hike. I can imagine skiing where you're not around people.
Right.
Yeah. So all those things
Out
are
in the
still
fresh
great
air.
for spring break. Yeah, that's pretty much my plan as we head towards spring break here. 48 degrees out of Shiloh and Seaside, Cam. Breezy northwest wind.
Give you a live look right now. This is the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., as the House and Senate office buildings will be closed to the public now until April 1st. The House and Senate sergeants at arms said the closure will begin this afternoon. Only lawmakers, aides, journalists, and official visitors will be allowed into the buildings. Officials say they are acting out of concern for health and safety. Well, we're learning of President Trump's first known encounter of someone who has the new coronavirus.
Yeah, a senior Brazilian official who attended weekend events with the president in Florida has tested positive for COVID-19. The Brazilian president's communications director tested positive. This was just days after that meeting. He stood right there next to President Trump and Vice President Mike Pence in this photo. This was posted on Instagram. The White House now says at this point, President Trump does not plan to be tested or go into self-quarantine.
A Lake Oswego father says that he had to fight to get his son tested for COVID-19. He says his son started displaying flu-like symptoms earlier this week, but tested negative for the flu and strep. Then yesterday, he had to take his son into the ER. The father didn't want to be identified to protect his son's identity. He says his teenage son was finally tested for COVID-19, but only after hours of insisting that the test was necessary. Hospital discharge papers confirm the teen was tested for coronavirus. That father says he managed to call the Oregon Health Authority and learned that some other labs can now test for the virus, not just through the state, but he says it took hours for the hospital to even figure out how this kind of outside testing can be done. He says now that they will have to wait days to get the results, and they're trying to figure out what the family will do.
We're trying to take a practical approach. We have him confined to a particular room that we've kind of set aside for if people in the family might get sick, and encouraging him not to come out to us, but we'll go into him, designating a restroom for him to use, trying to keep things clean.
He says the family is now trying to figure out if they will all be quarantining themselves as well, but he says this experience has taught him that you can't just take no for an answer.
So you probably have heard by now, if a group is larger than 250 people, you can't meet up.
So what does that mean for local events? Well, we're taking a closer look at that, and we're talking to one stressed out bride.
And it seems like every minute we're hearing something new, something different about coronavirus. So we are talking to a so-called virus hunter who is sorting through some of that misinformation to make sure you know the truth.
Now at 4:30, there have been a lot of changes today in the COVID-19 outbreak. We just learned that Central Catholic, Jesuit schools, Catlin Gable, and St. Mary's will be moving their classes online beginning next week.
That's right. Today, the NCAA also announcing it's canceling March Madness. And Just In Little League says it will delay all seasons across the country until April 6th. And popular tourist spots like Disneyland and Broadway are also closing its doors.
3 new cases were reported this afternoon, bringing the total in Oregon to 24. And Governor Kate Brown has banned gatherings now of more than 250 people until at least April 8th. The new rules on social gatherings in Oregon during the coronavirus outbreak is impacting, as you might imagine, the private event industry.
Absolutely. Our Sarah Hurwitz joins us now live in studio with what one company in Hillsborough is saying about its financial future. And this is having a big impact on some upcoming weddings as well.
Yeah, that's right. The owner of Northwest Event Management Group says that this is a loss of hundreds of thousands of dollars. The company's seen several events canceled over the last few months with coronavirus concerns, but now with the new state rules, he says the company's financial future is uncertain.
An empty event hall, multiple cancellations, and nerves about what to do next.
I don't know how I'm going to operate. I don't know how I'm going to pay the employees and the staff, which I care very much about. We're a family around here, so it hurts.
John Lee is the owner of Northwest Event Management Group. It hosts everything from weddings to corporate events and meetings, as well as benefit auctions. He says since January, the company's down about $500,000 from cancellations of events. And now with Governor Kate Brown's directive to cancel gatherings larger than 250 people, he says it's a heavy blow.
It's going to decimate us, and it's going to decimate the event industry as a whole.
Lee says he understands the health and safety priorities right now, but his question to Governor Kate Brown and other legislators, if this continues, how will business be able to recover?
Speed is of the essence right now on helping us out to get through this time. We've managed to get to here, and we might be fine for the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Beyond that, it's going to be very, very hard without some assistance.
Now, coming up tonight at 5, you'll hear from a bride whose wedding is coming up in May. She'll share some of her concerns and the uncertainty. Reporting live here in studio, Sarah Hurwitz, Fox 12 Oregon.
Sarah, thanks. The University of Oregon plans to offer all exams remotely out of caution of the coronavirus. This is similar to what the University of Washington did last week. Oregon will also hold the first 3 weeks of the spring term online. Oregon State University says it will also follow that example. They'll hold final exams for the winter term online where possible. In a letter to students and staff, the school says it will hold remote classes for the start of spring term. No exact timetable has been given. The school will hold an online information session to answer some of those questions. Well, in between, there are myths and rumors, information and misinformation. Today, the Fox 12 investigators sat down for an honest conversation with an expert in viruses at Portland State University. the subject to talk about how this particular virus really works and what we can expect moving forward.
Our Simon Gutierrez joins us now live in studio. He's been going to be bringing us more takeaways from that conversation throughout the evening. Simon, what do we know so far about how this virus is behaving?
Yeah, Bonnie, right now this virus is 7 times deadlier than the seasonal flu, although that's based on early numbers, which could go down as more people are tested. It's a lot less deadly than the last major coronavirus outbreaks, SARS and MERS. We asked Ken Stedman, who hunts for viruses in nature and teaches about all kinds of viruses at Portland State University, to explain that. So in the past, we've seen kind of similar outbreaks, SARS and MERS in the East. What's the difference between this virus and those viruses?
2 really major differences in terms of symptoms. The main one is that both SARS and MERS are much more deadly. SARS is about a 10% case fatality ratio, not a rate. MERS is actually about 30%. But those viruses are very poor at transmitting from human to human. This new virus is much worse at causing disease, but much better at transmitting from person to person.
So it spreads easier, but it's not nearly as deadly.
Exactly.
That was just one portion of about a 30-minute conversation we had about the coronavirus. Coming up at 5 and 6, we'll get into more about how the virus spreads, why it's impacting people of different ages differently, and a couple other questions at 10 o'clock as well.
Simon, I think, we're all pretty well read, kind of following this. Was there anything in your discussion that kind of surprised you, or maybe you said, wow, I didn't realize that was the case?
There's some things about transmission that there's different opinions about. We hear always, of course, that we need to wash our hands, and that's good hygiene, of course, that's common sense, and it also prevents the spread of disease. But in this case, what Mr. Stedman was saying was that the main mode of transmission was through particles in the air. So even if you're washing your hands, religiously, you can catch it by being 3 feet away from a person, that person talking, breathing, coughing, anything like that.
I have noticed myself kind of standing a little bit further away from people lately.
And in the conversation, he said that a good distance is about 6 feet, if you can imagine standing 6 feet away from somebody when you're having a conversation. But the reason is the particles that come out of your mouth, they travel in an arc, like a parabola, sort of like that. So the farther they go, the farther they fall. So the farther you are away, the less chance that it's going to land on you or be in some place that can infect you. So it's a lot of stuff to consider.
Glad we did this. This is going to be informative.
Yeah. Thanks, Simon.
Thanks so much. Worries about the spread of coronavirus have people taking extra precautions, including at church.
How one local pastor is handling that situation.
And Andy Carson is on another adventure this morning. He's checking out the impressive street art throughout the Rose City. Don't miss what he and others think about all the different designs.